All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need is a little juju. All you need. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Little Juju podcast. And you are watching Juju Tube, aka YouTube, where I bring the podcast over to visual. So today I'm interviewing Emanuel from Brands by Basnight, and I'm very excited. So, hey, Emanuel.
Hey, what's up?
Good. How you doing?
I'm cool. I'm in Chicago. It's like 7 degrees outside, and
See.
I'm asking myself, why do I live here? But other than that, I'm cool. Yeah.
Not why do I live here? I feel you on that one.
Cool.
So thank you for agreeing to be on the podcast today. You were another person that I was just like, oh, I need to interview him. Like, I just need to. And, before the other day, we never really had a chance to just kind of have a one-on-one talk. And so that was really good because I got to learn a lot about you, and really excited to share some of the things that I learned. I was like, oh, I see why he needed to be on here. I see why.
Oh, cool. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I feel like I shared with you that, I'm a listener of the podcast, and I pick up a lot of what you're putting down. So I'm just like happy to be here, and hoping this makes for good listening and good watching for everybody out there.
Ashay. I think so for sure. So let's get right into the interview. So who are you? Can you tell the people who you are, how you identify? That's how I start off all my interviews. Tell us who you is, who you be.
All right. Cool. My name is Emanuel Basnight. I live in Chicago. I've been in Chicago for about 12 years, but I'm originally from North Carolina. Small town on the coast, Elizabeth City, North Carolina. I miss all that good seafood. Man, like who am I? Like God knows. Like I'm right now. I'm in the middle of establishing the second part of my life. So who I am now, right now, I'm just integrating all sides of me into my public image or my public self. But just simply speaking, I'm just like a country dude, living in Chicago. I'm the oldest of four.
Wow.
I'm a creator. I love tinkering and making stuff. I love being a devotee to my ancestors, and in this second life that I was just talking about, I kind of feel like right now I've had to accept, this is who I am and this is what I do right now, and that has helped a lot because trying to fight it only gave me more stress and more headaches. And I was like, well, fuck it.
Not doing that.
Nah, This is where we at now.
I feel you. So how do you identify spiritually? You said you're a devotee to your ancestors. What does that mean to you? Or do you have a spiritual title or religions that you practice specifically?
I was raised Christian. So for the most part, my relationship to spirituality has been in the context of Black, Christianity, specifically the AME Zion Church. My mom's dad was a pastor, and then my mom's grandfather was a pastor. So for the longest time, anything spiritual for me was in the context of Christianity. It wasn't until my mother passed away in 2012 where I was sort of forced to ask questions, but fight for an answer. And the conclusion where I arrived was just maybe the people who taught me Christianity, they could only teach me things about religion and spirituality that just got me to this point. And I started to pay attention to a lot of the cliche stuff that people tell you when you're grieving, oh, God got a plan, and it just keep praying. And I'm just nah, but I'm telling y'all, you're telling me that my mother is dead, but I literally still feel like I have a mother. I don't feel like I'm not anybody's son. I feel like she's still here. And I'm having dreams where it's just mundane slice of life stuff. And it's just me and my siblings and my mom, and we're just watching TV, or we're going to a family reunion, or we're just doing super Black American stuff. And I'm just how come no one can answer this question? So I was in therapy at the time, and my therapist gave me a book called the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. And
Okay.
I ain't finished it, so I ain't even gonna front like I finished it. But what I did read, like it gave me the answers that I couldn't get in church, and it helped
Mm,
me come to terms with death, specifically my mother's transition. It helped me to focus on the quality of her transition as opposed to just being like super heartbroken that she died. Because like as she
right.
will often say, like we all getting up out of here, somehow, some way. So that sort of set me on the track to sort of identify or look outside of like Christianity. Today, I just say I'm a hoodoo practitioner. I know for some people that it may mean different things for like a lot of people, but for
Yeah.
me, I sort of lead with like being a devotee to my ancestors first. Like I just made a meal last night. They had some chicken and some black eyed peas and some cornbread and like, some broccoli. And I was just like,
Right.
and like this is where I'm at now, and it's working for me, but it's also like I'm on a transitional, sort of path. Like I know that my path is gonna lead me somewhere. I know that where I'm at now, where I am spiritually, is not like the final end. But like to answer your
Sure.
question, I identify as like a hoodoo practitioner, but I come from like a Christian, background, super
Yeah.
Christian.
Yeah. I was actually just gonna ask that, but I guess you just answered like, growing up, not just in the church, but you come from a legacy of preachers, essentially. So
Yeah,
how does that and how do you find Christianity, if it does at all, impact your hoodoo? Because some people say it does, some people say it doesn't. So curious for you what that looks like.
like yeah, man. Like I grew up in one of those families where like people would try to put like that preacher shit on you, like oh you gonna be a preacher, like oh you read so well, you know how to like
Mhm.
conduct yourself in front of a group of people, like you gonna be a preacher, as if there are like no other careers out there that like
That's all you
that
got.
use like public speaking and all that kind of shit. But
I love us.
um I this is where I'm at now, like my research, because there was a point in time where I was just like, forget church, I don't need it. And
Mhm.
then that sort of trends morphed into me taking a step back and looking at like the full spiritual identity of Black people in the South in the United States. And like I know what we are now for a lot of people, it's just like super like anti Abrahamic religion, and like I'm not fronting like I'm in church every Sunday either. But
Mhm.
for me, honestly, looking at how our ancestors sort of lived, they did use some Christian tactics, philosophy, principles, and practices. They
Absolutely.
also use what they were able to like hold on to from like them from their African spiritual identities. Like,
Right.
and like I just stepped back and I was just like, so why am I, racking my brains trying to figure out like is it one or the other, or that I have to like sacrifice one to make sure that I'm being like super authentic, when related to the other. And they just like got me thinking about like being a Black American. I am African and I am American, and those
Right.
are like. So I know, like we throw the term out there, but it's like the term ain't come from nowhere. Like I have like equal parts like Africanness and everything brought through the transatlantic slave trade and the
Right.
diaspora. And I also have like what I garnered, being born on this land. And that
Mhm.
sort of turned into like me just like taking an honest look at like myself and just going like, I don't feel like I should like sacrifice any parts of myself. So
Mm.
I don't have an answer for anybody in terms of like, does Christianity belong to hoodoo? All I know is that when my cousin was murdered last August, I
Mm.
felt compelled to pull up my cards. I did a reading and I got information about like how he was murdered, the
Mm.
context of it, the circumstances behind it, and then I just had this nudge to just like pick up the Bible and like I don't know the Bible out of the back of my hand. Like, for as much as my grandparents had me and my siblings in church, like I could probably give you one or two good Bible verses off the top of my head. Um, but I just sat and I closed my eyes and I took three deep breaths and I flipped through the Bible until I felt like I was told to stop. And where I stopped was pretty much like the story of Daniel being set up by, these co-conspirators, like these people who like conspired to like kill him. And that's exactly what happened to my cousin. So
Ooh.
I knew I had to work with that passage.
Yes.
And my cousin's murders were identified quickly. Um, and like, who am I to say, like, well, this was used to torment my ancestors, this being a religion, as it was. But like in that particular moment, like my Christian as ancestors was like, pick up that Bible
Open it.
and
Yeah.
flip through it. And now I'm just like super used to just being like a vessel and receptive. So, I was told to use it. I use it. I don't use it every day. Like I used to have my
Right.
Bible on my altar, but now I took it off. But like I'm still in here like I'm turning on some Clark sisters. Like, if I
Okay.
get like, the urge to. So like I don't even know if I answer your question. I know like and I don't try to do a lot of like proselytizing in terms of like what hoodoo should be and how you should reckon with it because I kind of feel
Mm-hmm.
like a part of being American and a part of hoodoo is like knowing God for yourself
Yeah.
because our ancestors were sort of forced to like practice in private. Like our oppressors didn't like we didn't have the leeway of like holding like large group assemblies in the public and
Mm-hmm.
convening regularly. So a lot of our practices were done like individually based or in like super small groups. So like to me, like that just reminds me of like when my granddaddy always used to be like, you need to know God for yourself. I can't tell you who God is, and your grandma can't
Right.
either. And
Right.
that definitely has folded into like my hoodoo practices. So I don't know if I answered your question,
You
man.
did.
Okay,
You
all right, cool.
did.
Yeah,
And I think it's
yeah,
important to talk about because, and I find in my own personal journey, I've been picking up the Bible a lot more, like a lot more. And I think I went through my whole phase, as a lot of people do, not to call this a phase because some people truly believe this and that's fine,
yeah,
but like that there's no space for the Bible or Christianity at all in hoodoo. And you just, it's like, well, there has to be, because you just provided a beautiful example of how you were able to tell a lot about what happened to your cousin through literally biblical divination, which
yeah.
is a valid form of divining, which I do often too. My ancestors are often like, girl, if you don't go pick that Bible and go to Psalms, and I'm like,
Yeah, right,
okay,
right.
let me open the Psalms.
I
Yeah.
I know like for me, the rubber hits the road when you go from like theory to like practice. And there are a
Yes.
lot of beliefs that we have about hoodoo that like make sense in theory, but like
Sure.
when you go to like do work, when
It's
you like
different.
commune like with your ancestors, like it's like that's where you're sort of forced to like test like all the shit you read on Facebook and all the stuff somebody told you like with like what's like applicable. And had I been on some like fuck Abraham and religions and da 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 da. I wouldn't have been able to have a sneak peek at the resolution, you know
Yes.
what I'm saying, and like stand in that while I like support my aunt and uncle as they went through like their son being murdered and then trying to figure
Right.
out how to do like a funeral during COVID and all of this stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
I knew what happened, and I also knew what the resolution was going to be. So like I I look at hoodoo now based on like a lot of the reading that I've done is like I try to practice it how our ancestors practice it. And I kind of feel like it's not 100% accurate to be like, the Bible has no place in hoodoo. Like
Mm-hmm.
you can definitely focus on like the Africanness of it.
Yeah.
But in this country, like the predominant religion was like Christianity.
It
And for a
was.
lot of our enslaved ancestors, like just being able to go to church was like the only like social gathering they were allowed to do. So why
Right.
wouldn't they infuse like hoodoo into like church? You
Right.
know what I'm saying? Like to me, like it doesn't make sense. So I just try to do my best to like strip any like kind of like political correctness or like assumptions away, like from like a modern person's point of view, like looking at like what hoodoo should be, and just like
Mm-hmm.
honestly just try to like be like, well, how would people practice it then, and then how can I sort of like remain or hold on to like the truths of that, but also be like super cognizant of like the time I live in now, because I feel like well now we do have opportunity to like gather in groups. and like,
Right.
ring, shout, praise, and
Right.
share and teach and all of this stuff, whereas like, our ancestors didn't. But that doesn't mean that like we necessarily have to walk away from the part of hoodoo that I feel like forces you to like learn God for yourself. Like I feel like we can
Mm-hmm.
do both. I feel like there's a duality to hoodoo, just like there's a duality to being black in America that like
There is.
needs to be like lifted up.
Right. And, we're in a time where we get to say what it is. Like we get to call the church hoodoo. Like we
Mm-hmm.
get to say
Mm-hmm.
certain experiences that we have had in church weren't just about Christianity or Jesus at all, but
Yeah.
that was some hoodoo shit going on, or that
Yeah.
was our Africanness popping out. We see that all
Yeah.
throughout the Black church. And I think that's really what's amazing for us now. It's like, okay, we can do hoodoo however we want. We can go to church and read the Bible, but like we also get to name it as such in a way that I
Right.
don't think our elders cared to, wanted to, thought to, I don't know.
Yeah, or like needed to.
Or
Like
needed
and like
to, right.
I'm pretty sure people gonna watch this episode and be like, here come this capping ass Jesus nigga out here talking about church, blah 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 blah. Like that's
No, they
how
not.
I'm saying.
They not, but I hear you.
But often like what I think about is like we are so tied to like Africa and the countries of like Western Africa where like our like forefathers and foremothers were taken from. Like even to this day in church, black people praise the Christian God like Africans praise their deities at home. Like all of this
Yes.
like shouting and anointing and like possession, what you call it, catching the Holy Ghost, like that is a direct correlation to how our folks
Absolutely.
like convene and praise and call down like their deities at home. And I kind of
Mm-hmm.
feel like if anything, the job of hoodoo is to like brush the dust off the connections to be like, hey, we didn't just create this stuff. Like, when we were brought to this stinking ass country, like we brought this with us from somewhere else, and somewhere else is
Yes.
like over there. You know what I'm saying? So like,
Right.
that just goes back to my point of like me thinking or feeling like, well, I shouldn't have to deny like one part of myself because because I'm both.
Because I'm both. It's something you said when we talked last week. You said, doesn't matter that the art that I like is in a frame that I don't. I think that's what you said. That was the way you put it.
Yeah. I do remember that. Like, and like that's honestly how I feel about like where I am right now, like my spiritual path. And it's like it's not that like I'm in here like wrestling with this because for the most part I'm just trying to wrestle my timeline down because I got too many things going on. But like I just kind of feel like if you were to take a picture of like an authentic like hoodoo ass, like experience, like back in like the early 1900s, like late 1800s, like you would see some of everything. And I just kind of feel like that picture is what I'm like working to get like a clearer view of. And if
Yeah.
it's put in the frame of like, some United States of America bullshit or the frame of like, white Jesus, like I can ignore the frame and focus on like the picture. And I kind of feel like I shouldn't have to like dislike the picture if it's like, if it comes in the frame of like, Lord have mercy, like America and its bullshit. And like a lot of this too, it's just like being honest about like where we are and like how we got here and like how we survived and like motherfuckers really did what they had to do. Like I don't feel like anybody was just like, yeah, let me worship this white ass Jesus motherfucker. It was just like, man, like if I indoctrinate into this like religion that would give me more time on the weekends to spend, you know what I'm saying, like with my family and whatnot. So it's like I don't want to do it, but might have to. And it's just I don't know, it's so complex, and I don't feel like it's as simple as going like church is bad and everything else is good. I kind of feel like with everything else in this country, it's just complex, and you have to like take a step back as much as possible and look at the bigger picture and figure out like where you fit in it. That's all I try to do.
Yeah. And I love that because, I think that it gets to a conversation that I would like to have more. And this isn't even a question. I didn't write down none of these questions I ask you, but this is just getting good. But it's just making me think about, our ancestors. Sometimes we talk about them as if they just kind of went along with Christianity, didn't have any ideas about anything. They were just like, oh, well, I guess I gotta go practice Christianity now. And like they couldn't have possibly been empowered. They couldn't have possibly had, I use the word choice very carefully, but some kind of choice to be strategic. Like there's just, and I don't want us to keep talking about them like that. I mean, maybe some of them were like, well, shoot, let's see what they talking about. Like, I mean, there's so many possibilities of what people thought and why they did what they did.
Again, like if when your survival is on the line, you do what the fuck you need to do. And some people felt like they were just like, oh, fuck this shit, I'm out. You know what I'm saying? And like took themselves out. Some people ran away. Some people chose to stay and endure. Like, I don't feel like, I'm always scratching my head when I hear like other Black people like talk negatively about like our enslaved, like, ancestors. Cause I'm just like, man, like you have no idea, like, one, how close you are to being like, enslaved yourself. All it would take is a stroke of a motherfucking pen. You know what I'm saying? And look at like look at these past 4 years, you pretty much had like you had refugees in camps and shit. You had people locked down. Like you had a whole swath of people who like, not allowed to come to the country. Like it ain't that far, you know what I'm saying? Of a possibility. But then on top of that, like when your whole objective is like to survive, like I don't know. I kind of feel like a lot of niggas this day and age, they super weak. They could not handle like a fraction of what our ancestors like dealt with. Damn sure don't have like the testicular fortitude to deal with it. But then it come off and just be like, oh, why didn't they fight? Why didn't they this? No. To me, it's just like a whole bunch of embedded anti-Black, anti-African bullshit. And they don't even realize that they're exhibiting it. But to me, that's what it looks like.
Yes. Whoo, that was good. Thank you for that. I want to get to something that we talked about, and it was around in Hoodoo. It's enough to do what your ancestors say. And so I think a lot of times with I guess me having the podcast or whatever, a lot of people will reach out and be like, hey, I want to do this type of spell or this type of work in. And I need these 3 things. What do you think about it? And it's always so hard to answer questions like that for a myriad of reasons. But one of the main ones being like, well, I don't know what your people want you to do, or the way your people did this type of work is the way my people did this type of work. So I want you to talk about that because we talked about that the other day and I was like, yes, please bring that up. It's enough to do what your people say.
Yeah, listen. So this
tell the plant story.
I know, right? This year I stepped into like my like role as a creator. Because I've always been like artistic, little motherfucker, like came out of the womb drawing and painting. My mom made sure I had like art supplies all the time and everything. So, but I've gotten away from that, career, job, work, niggas, you know what I'm saying, just distracting you, like, from everything. So I was like, I'm getting back to this year. Because Brands by Basnight kind of showed me my skincare company. So it showed me that like I like concepting and like creating, like manifesting, like, ideas. So for me, like my folks tell me stuff to do all the time. And I finally stopped, like, going to other people and going online to Google, like, well, what is this flower? Like, how is this working a candle? Because I realized, like, people don't know. Like, people don't know this wooden divination set I'm supposed to make because, like, it wasn't for people. Like, it was for me. So I had to, like, get super comfortable, like, receiving these messages. And I do get them a lot. I have a whole wall over here with, like, notepads of shit I'm supposed to, like, make. In the next 2 years. But I also had to like trust that, like, for whatever reason, like this particular thing needs to exist through me. So I'm just going to do it. I feel like one of my favorite stories about like trusting your folks and doing the work that they want you to do is like this little plant right here. So this is Whitfieldia elongata, also known as a white candleflower plant. I've had it for like 2 years.
She's looking good.
I call her Big Mama, so I just be like, "Hey, Big Mama, how you doing?"
Hey, Big Mama.
Like 2 years ago, I had a dream where I was in this, and I'm a dreaming motherfucker. So like, I guess you would call it like clairvoyance, but I kind of hate those clair terms because it sounds like a little too like mainstream, like witchy. But and when I'm asleep, dead people tell me stuff and they show me stuff. I had to text a cousin this morning because I had a dream about her and her
Wow.
granddaddy. But in this dream, I'm driving down this road. There's these purple morning glory flowers all over the place. And I come to a fork in the road. I get out the car, and I was like, "Well, I'm just gonna walk, follow these flowers."
Mm-hmm.
And the flowers lead to like this trellis, excuse me, behind like this big white church, but it's like the back of the church. And there's this woman with like this denim vest and this low cut like purple hair. It was like real curly. She had
Hmm.
like buttons and pins all on her vest. And there was somebody who was walking away with like a bag of like the flowers that was growing in his trellis. And I was just like, churches do this? Flat out churches like gave flowers to people. And she was like, yeah, people in the community, like they come and they use these flowers for all types of things, like teas and then their baths. And I was just
Mm-hmm.
like, man, that's pretty cool. Like nobody ever did this in my granddaddy's church. It's like, that I knew
Yeah.
of. And she was like, yeah, people use these flowers just like the white candle flower. And I was just like, huh? And she was like, yeah, the white candle flower. She was like, you don't know what the white candle flower is? And then like I woke up. So first I'm like, all right, bitch, like don't be shading me in my dreams. But I genuinely did not know. You know what I'm saying? So the fact I'm just like, huh? You're just like, look at this nigga. Like he don't know nothing. So then I immediately just like get on the computer and I'm just like, in the midst of like taking a shower, getting dressed, trying to go to the bus and making it work, like I'm like researching, like furiously, like trying to find out like what a white candle flower is.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to eliminate what it wasn't, and then eventually I came to a page, or somebody sent me a link to a page that talked about this particular plant. So when it blooms, the flowers are white and they're
Wow.
super fragrant. And from what I read, like it originates in like Western Africa, and it was used in a lot of like love work, um, attraction work, and like the leaves are like supposed to be medicinal. But I was like, I ain't eating no leaf. I don't care what kind of flower it is. So like now I'm legit like taking care of this plant. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm supposed to use the flowers like in
Well, your work.
some product
Mm-hmm.
like for my
Mm-hmm.
people. And like if I was on some like, well, I'm gonna add everybody else what they think, and I don't about to know about this. I ain't gonna do it. Like I would not have known anything about this plant. I would not have
Right.
known how I'm supposed to use it. Like, and that probably would have deaded the relationship between like my folks and me, because like now they tell me all kinds of stuff. Like I have to make all kinds of stuff, but
A
that's
conjure
like
man.
I know, right? But like I had to tell somebody last week, like, yo, like it's like a song and dance sometimes because like yes there is a collective like like hoodoo and like diasporic like consensus when it comes to like this type of work,
Right.
but then on this land and in your lineage there may be like super specific things that won't make sense to like anybody else,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not supposed to. So like why would you like break your neck trying to get validation from like people outside of your line? Like you might be better off like talking to some of your other folks and seeing like how this herb was used, and if anybody lived in a particular like part of town and any stories around like a specific location. Like
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of feel like if we have a solid 15 years of like black people, black Americans who practice hoodoo doing that, like what's 15 plus 21? 2036, like it's gonna be on and popping. Like I feel like you can see like
Yeah.
hoodoo taught in like universities, all types of like festivals. We can see like creative and content born like right out of like Black American spirituality. Like I just feel like that's the type of work that needs to be done, and I feel like I'm trying to contribute. You know what I'm saying, like to that.
Of
So
course. Right.
I'm also practicing what I'm preaching around here.
Yeah. We love to see it. And I think it's
Mm,
so important to go back to our people, and of course it's not that you can't ask around or that you don't reach out to
right.
people and build community, like, oh, how have you used sweet
Mm-hmm.
basil, like that's fine.
Yep.
But I think you will always get the best information if you go to your people, if you go to your lineage, because again, if you Google that flower plant, I'm sure, I mean, I actually had never heard of it till you said it. You told me
Listen,
about it. I was
now and
like,
I kind of just stopped telling people about it because they just be like, I'm pretty sure people like, I feel like they're just like, here you go making up shit. But like, nah, like it's legit plant, and it's, I feel like just to build on something you just share, like going to your people to me, because I have people just like, well, what, like, how do you do that? Like, what do you do? And I was like,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
what I do is I'm very upfront with them, and I just be like, and y'all know I don't know nothing about this plan. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all the ones who told me about it. So I'm gonna let you tell me like the rest. I'm gonna go off me doing my work. I ain't gonna be sitting idly by like wait for you to come to me. But I am open and receptive when you feel like sharing information. And
Right.
usually 9 times out of 10, like I'm always shown something, reminded of something, getting the urge
Mm-hmm.
to try something.
Mm-hmm.
And like they've never been like off. Never.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know people will probably think like, well, he's a dreamer. Like y'all have gifts. And it's not necessarily about that. Like, of course, spirits tell us things in dreams or whatever. But again, you can see it's in signs. It could be
Mm-hmm.
in a song. It could be you come across something on the internet that was like, and it just like hit you like, oh yeah, that's what I need to do with that. So it's not always about a spirit coming down to you like, hello,
Yeah.
this is this plant. And
Yeah.
it
Right.
don't always happen like that.
Right.
And that's
Right.
okay. Most of the
Mm-mm.
time, it might not, if that's not your gift, and it's
But to
okay.
me, that reminds me of like because I'm teaching like an intro to tarot class at this black owned metaphysical store here in Chicago at the end of the month called a Lotus Den. But a good portion of the class, like I'm gonna devote to like talking through understanding how spirit talks to you.
Yes, get into it.
Everybody does not have the same channels or the same stations, you know what I'm saying, or the same like devices. Like I used to want to see dead people all the time, but I'm like, they don't pop up to me while I'm awake. Now, when I'm asleep, like it's another story. But like if I were to just totally like base my relationship or my ability to receive messages on like being a medium and mediumship, then I would be like denying myself like any other type of pathway to like creating a relationship like with spirit. So when I had to be like, okay, I'm a dreamer. And that thing is to be like, how y'all communicate. So I'm gonna just make sure like I do what I need to make sure I get like a solid 8 and good quality sleep and
Yes.
making sure I'm like keeping like a dream journal so I can like capture all of this stuff. But I didn't spend like my waking hours trying to be like something that I'm, not, or trying to,
Mm-hmm.
excuse me, to create like more pathways for communication that weren't like inherently mine. And that's not to say like, I guess you could learn how to do those things. I don't really know.
Right.
But I was focused on like being a dreamer and like receiving messages like in my dream state and then making sure that I'm like passing on the messages if they're like related to certain people or like
Mm-hmm.
chronicling them in my journal so I can like record them. And that's it.
Yep. We gotta stay in our respective lanes
Basically.
and listen to our spirits within that lane. And that's
Yeah,
okay.
because now everybody's on some like Pokemon shit, like trying to catch all the clears. Like, I'm gonna clear this and clear sentient, clear audio, da 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 da. And it's just like,
You might be, but you might not be, and it's okay.
but if you are, does it matter if you're everything? If you're like a mediocre, you know what I'm saying, like clearing everything, you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, like you're an empath. But if you spend all day trying to read cards and convene with nature spirits and like, be clear sentient and all this other
I
stuff, like
see.
how are you
Mhm.
like feeding and cultivating like your like inherent empathic like abilities? Like build
Right.
that muscle.
I feel that. I feel that.
Yeah.
Getting strong in the thing and sticking to
Mm-hmm.
that and letting spirit see your consistency and speak to you through that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a valid point. That's a
I mean,
valid point.
I'm just sharing what I learned, man, because like
Yeah.
I started reading cards, tarot first, that transitioned into playing cards, and there was a part of me that's just like, I want to read with everything. And then I was just like, no, let's just focus on these cards, man. Like, chill out.
Yeah.
And like, my card practice has gone so fucking deep because I chose to just like focus like on
On the
that.
cards.
That has also opened ways for me to like read water and read bones and
Mm-hmm.
read shells. And it's just like I had to stick with that one discipline like long enough. So I guess like to prove my like proficiency, but then also to get me in like a comfortable state of like channeling like information. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So Now I read like a couple of things, but like it all started with like cards, and even the way I read cards now is like way more immersive than how it was like when I first started out. And I feel like that only happens because I chose to like stuck with it.
Right. And
Yeah.
because what it sounds like is that you just listen to what your people and what your spirit, I guess, is telling you to do and just focusing on that thing. I know as someone who also reads cards, again, a lot of people will be like, well, I don't know what the numbers mean. And I went through that too when I first started reading cards. I asked one of my friends, I was like, can you tell me what every number means? Because I don't know. And she was like, girl,
Yep.
you can read, go and sit with him and then she told me a little general stuff, but she was like, go sit with your people. And I did.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's what the numbers mean. And if I Google what 5 means, it's kind of the same as how I read it, but it's a different spin and energy on it. I can't Google what 5 means.
And it don't hit the same.
It don't,
either.
right.
You know what I'm saying? Like it just doesn't. And like I've had to go through that. Lord mercy. I started reading one deck of playing cards, and then I had another deck that was just sitting around, and I used that deck to look into like my cousin's murder, and I heard this boy say 2 and 1, and I was just like, I mean, yeah, I know 2 people like planning to like, kill him. And I heard it again, 2 and 1 as I'm holding this deck. So I look on my altar where I have like the deck where I usually read clients, and I was like, I know y'all don't want me to add this red and black deck to this red deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, fuck, I'm supposed to add like 2 decks of what to read with this? This is crazy. So I did it for like a couple of months. And then and the readers was like super like on point. And then I ended up getting another deck supporting this Kickstarter. I think it's the natives playing card deck or the natives deck.
Mm-hmm.
And I took that deck out of packaging and just like my arms started like shaking, and I was like, oh shit. So then I divined, and I was just like, am I supposed to read this deck? This is a yellow deck, and it's like, yeah. And I was just like, am I supposed to add this to the other 2 decks? And I got a yes. And I was like, are y'all serious? And I got my pendulum, and I was like, I got a yes. I was like, how am I supposed to read with 3 decks in one? Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
But then I had to sit with it for like a week, and then it like hit me, and I was just like, oh, I know exactly how these joints like work, and I know like what each deck represents, and I also know. So I was like, everything is sort of like came together. So now I read with 3 decks in one.
Wow.
And
skills.
For a second, I was just like, I don't know if this is like the norm. Like, do people really do this? And then I had to be like, this is what I was told to do. So
I really do
sure,
it. So that's enough.
Pretty sure how I read is like not have somebody else like teaches it or whatever. So
yeah, right.
Yeah, that's just another story of like listening to your folks and staying in your lane because, yeah, man, 3 decks in one. Like, that's where I'm at now. I was like, let's try to add another deck.
Yes, 3 decks. I love that.
I know.
I love that.
It gets crazy sometimes, but it's cool.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
So I want to sort of change the pace a little bit. So my next question for you is, where the hoodoo niggas at? Because where are the hoodoo niggas at? I'm asking that question though in all seriousness because I think in a lot of spiritual spaces, from the church to hoodoo to whatever, it was filled with women, and that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. It just is what it is. And so I'm curious about your experience in this space that is heavily populated with women, and then how you connect with other conjure men if you do, and how can this space facilitate more healing for Black men specifically in a hoodoo context? That was a lot of questions, so just
it's one question. I get it. And like for I want to say maybe like 2016 when I started finding like these like online groups and these online people and like a lot of like great women. Like to this day, I'm just like, I owe Mama Rue like, a huge debt of gratitude because like meeting her kind of like, like put me on like a certain path. But I ended up asking her, I was like, how come all of these spaces are like filled with like women? And she was like, plain and simple, like when dudes come into this space, they always be trying to fuck. And especially if they in positions of like authority or power, and she's just like, so it's kind of like the community in the space has learned to go on without these kind of men. Because like, who got time for that? And I was when she told me that, I was like, I mean, I don't blame you, but like I do often wonder, like, man, like where the brothers at? Like, as a community, can we really heal if like we don't heal black men, or we don't create a space for black men to heal themselves? And that's not to say like I don't enjoy the spaces and the affiliations and the people I met. Um, but I ain't trying to hear nobody talk about using their period blood again. Like, oh my God, like, blow my fucking brains out. Every time I see a post, it's like, has anybody used that mistress? And I'm just like, all right, I'm out.
Listen, we're trying to figure it out, okay?
I know, and I'm just like, and I can't be up in here like, oh, here you go again, because this ain't my face, you know what I'm saying? So part of me being in these spaces is like respecting and honoring like the women who created them and like their inspiration for creating them, but being in those spaces has forced me to realize that like there aren't a lot of spaces for black men to like address black male spiritual health. And like I don't have an answer. Like recently I just offered a discounted 30-minute reading like for black men only on my site.
Okay. Wow.
At www.bybasnight.com. But yeah, it's just like I wish I had an answer to like where they are, because I know they out there. Like, because I get a lot of like one-off questions and DMs, you know what I'm saying? But I just kind of feel like, man, that is why I have to be like more visible. I feel like visibility is the key. Like, if we don't see hoodoo niggas out in the world doing hoodoo nigga shit, then other brothers won't feel like there's like a space for them. And I hate to say that, because it's just like to say like, well, the space that exists now like isn't for men, and that's not what I'm saying. But like people relate to people who look like them, who share their experiences and their values,
right?
And like for a lot of men, like I don't know if they would necessarily feel comfortable being vulnerable enough to learn in a lot of these spaces that have been built to like protect, promote, and nurture like black women, to the point where it's just like, and black women need that shit too. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not saying like these spaces like don't need to exist. I just feel like people should have the opportunity to get their medicine in ways that best suit them. And in this particular instance, I kind of feel like I don't know if there's any medicine for black men right now. You know what I'm saying? Like in a broad culture, especially from like a ATR or hoodoo perspective, I should say. Like, I don't know. So I'm just trying to do my part on like a small scale, but eventually I feel like there would be some type of platform for brothers to like feed themselves and like get that spiritual medicine. Because I see the need. I see the need like all the time. All the time. Like the most I try to do is like make sure the men around me, you know what I'm saying, like, like they getting like the medicine they need, especially if they call me up and ask me. So like I give them a reading, I pray for them, I do like whatever, like, I can. Well, I ain't out here on no like crumple dollar type shit, you know what I'm saying? Like trying to recruit motherfuckers and get ties and start a group. Because I don't feel like that's not my ministry, but we need something. Definitely.
And do. What do you feel like black men could get out of hoodoo specifically? Or maybe even what have you gotten out of it that you think is unique to your experience as a black man?
You know what? That is a really good question. And I don't know if I have a specific answer. I do know that like I've learned the value of like being still, and I don't know if black men, this is huge generalization, are comfortable with the notion of being still, because like in a capitalistic society, like our whole worth is tied to how much we can like produce.
Right.
And how much we can like provide. So being still is just like you're not making anything, you're not bringing in anything, so you're kind of useless. And like nobody wants to be useless. So you have like generations of men who are just taught that like you got to be on the move, you got to be on the grind. If you ain't bringing that home, you ain't no man, you ain't this and that. And like so much of our identity and space is tied to just like working and being on the go. And it's like all of those things are like kind of like distractions. Like, they're like obligations, of course, but they shouldn't be obligations to the point where like you don't have time to like sit and just like listen to music or sit and like talk to your like deceased ancestors or sit and spend time with your family or just sit and like spend time with yourself. Like that's when like the messages and stuff like come through. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're not even getting like 6 hours of sleep, then how the fuck you supposed to have like a decent ass dream? How somebody supposed to come to you in your dream and you getting like 3 hours of sleep a night?
And you tossing and turning all night.
You talking and turning. They gonna be like, shit, he ain't even in his REM stage yet. Like how the fuck we supposed to talk to him? Like so like the value of being still, I learned it the hard way, like through Hoodoo. I kind of feel like black men could like, I feel like that could help because I feel like it will look different for a black man to explain to other black men like the importance of being like still. I've also learned that like nature is the shit, and the reason I say that is because like a lot of us live in like urban, like developed areas, so we don't really get a chance to be out, you know what I'm saying, in nature. Yeah. And I'm just kind of like, bruh, like nature will like ground and humble your ass at the same time. And like, you think you on big shit and you think you calling shots, like you might be on your block, but like spend a night in the woods. Like it was like,
let's see what a real boss says.
Exactly. Like, okay. Right. Like you don't want shit. You don't want shit around here, Tyreek. Like you don't want nothing. These my woods, nigga. Like appreciation of nature. Absolute like appreciation of like women, like especially black women. Nah, not especially black women. Period. I just kind of feel like, and like I'm a big old like flaming homo. You know what I'm saying? So it ain't like I'm like out here like trying to wife up anybody, whatever. But like I appreciate like the union and the like relationship between like black men and black women. If Hoodoo has taught me anything, it's taught me that black people, period, have not had a chance to love each other not under the oppression of like racism. And so I had a friend ask me the other day, she was just like, like, what is black love? And I was like, honestly, I don't know if we can even get a true depiction of black love because like everything we think about is under the pressure of like fucking like racism. So like if you take racism out of the picture, then I feel like you can get like an authentic like depiction of like love between black people. But like if our relationships are based on us doing what we need to do to like survive and thwart this fucking like white enemy, it's so much of the energy could go to the relationship itself. So I just kind of feel like reading about Hoodoo, like approaching like womanhood and manhood from like a spiritual perspective. And that actually goes for like queer same gender relationships and like, all type of relationships on the spectrum. Like it's giving me like a new appreciation for like how black people love black people. And like I don't know, it just was turned super mushy. And I don't like mushy, but like
I love it. Go ahead.
I just kind of feel like, learning about like, so for example, like last year I was just meditating on, how can I help like black men, like, like pay attention and be aware of like the spiritual like health. Like what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? So what ended up happening is like my reading I started getting all these messages from like deceased black men. And they were talking about a range of things like missing, the significant others and wishing they were better fathers and wanted to like wanted to play matchmaker and like hook introduce their daughter to like this guy who they felt like was the right match. Excuse me. And all of my clients would be like, they never thought about this before. They never thought about relationships before. They never like asked me what type of like partner I wanted before. They never apologized for being a shitty father before. And it hit me, and I was just like, bro, like you've been like in here like asking what you can do, for black men. Like the first part is like making sure you like channel these messages from like, these black men who passed to like, so they could show or at least help their living descendants see that like they learned and they've grown and they have like a new perspective. And I and a lot of that, a lot of those conversations have to do with like relationships and romantic relationships, and it's just like,
Yes.
man, like it's weird because like I just met this motherfucker, so I don't know his background, but like these cars are telling me to say stuff like I'm sorry, and I don't want my grandson being born with you hating me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like saying stuff like that, and I'm just like I don't know what this means, and the client is just like I know exactly what it means. So
Wow.
I don't even know if I like answer your question or not, but I just kind of feel like in terms of like learning about hoodoo, being focused on like being like an asset to black men and like serving my community, trying to make sure that like black men get the medicine that they need. It sort of turned into like dead brothers pretty much like telling me to tell their family like, hey, so and so said they was gonna sell mama house, split the money, but they kept the money. So you might want to look into that. You know what I'm saying? It's like all kinds of stuff that comes up, and it's from people's daddies and granddaddies and uncles and great uncles and brothers. And all I do is just like, I hope this makes sense. And all the time, people are just like,
yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
It does.
Yes. And then there's a lot of healing, I think, going on in the spiritual realm with our forefathers. And I see it and feel it. And yes, it is some powerful shit going on. So thank you for sharing
that. Oh, you're welcome.
So we have to talk about Brands by Basnight. Like that's your whole brand. Tell us what it is that you do. Your skin looking gorgeous. I have some balm on right now. So can you tell people about your brand?
Brands by Basnight. I like to call it a modern plant-powered skincare line inspired by ancestral healing traditions. And like the inspired by ancestral healing traditions part is like it carries a lot of weight with me because like this company would not exist if I didn't listen to like my folks like play with this stuff and learn these plants. And one night I heard this voice say like I was thinking about like if I should like form a LLC, and I was just like, why don't I just wait till I get paid? Like, that's in 2 weeks. And I heard this voice say, use your credit card. So I was like, all right, like, I got up and like I got my wallet and I formed my LLC. Like apply for my LLC like that night. So like it's a spirit led business to me. My focus is on skincare. Excuse me. I've asked if I can make other products. I'm always told no. So like primarily butters, balms, oils, baths, beard care, and everything begins with B because it's my name. Yeah, so you got Batch by Basnight, that's the shea butter blend, and then there's Balm by Basnight, that's a castor jelly body balm. You got Beard by Basnight, it's like the beer combo. Bathe by Basnight is the bathing soap, and then Bath by Basnight is a body oil. I feel like I'm forgetting one. Right now, my business is set up seasonally, so I'm selling like my butters and my balms. And then in spring and summer, I switched to like my body oils. But yeah, like it's been a great journey. Like me and my folks, they just telling me how to blend fragrances and make these recipes and how things should look and how I should describe them and all kinds of stuff. And it's like everything I shared before about like what I've learned through Hoodoo has been like applied through this business. Because there have been periods when I had to be still and listen. There were periods when I had to just like act, you know what I'm saying, and take action. There were periods when I had to be super patient. So like it's man, that could be a fucking discussion within itself. But yeah, this Brands by Basnight is my baby. And it's keeping me busy.
How old is it?
3 years old.
3 years? Okay.
Just 3.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love mine. You sent me some, and I had a friend come over. She was like, "What you got on?" I was like, "This." Why did she take a spoon, scoop out half of mine, and put it in a Ziploc? And I'm like, "You could have just bought." So I'm just saying, that's a testament to we love it.
I hear stories like this a lot. So
Yeah, she took half the daggone jar in a Ziploc.
She better put it. She better put it to good use.
She need to buy me another one because what? But yeah, so I'm just telling my listeners, yes, the smell is amazing. Okay, so plug your things. Tell us what you do. You brought up that you do readings, but can you just get into detail? Like what services do you offer? We know you sell the butters, but what else?
Yeah, sure. I'm also a reader. I read my playing cards. I read 2 days out of the week at the Lotus Den here in Chicago. And I also read on Sundays. Like I said before, I do have a discounted rate for black men. So it's like $25 for like 30 minutes. What else? I'm also working on a line of spiritual products that my people told me to make. And I'm just like, who got the money for this? And they're just like, don't worry about it. Just work on the concept. So working on the concept. Also, got a download to make a line of prayer candles. I'm working on that. That's actually how I cut my finger because I'm working with like tin cans, and I was like wiping the can out, and it was like that's my finger. Man, what else? It's just a whole bunch of stuff going on, but like I'm super excited. I'm nervous like half the time because I'm just like, I don't know how this can turn out. But for the most part, it's just me like working through the assignments that they give me. So yeah, like any other time, you just follow me on IG and I'll be ranting and complaining about like making all of this shit. But I do love it.
What's your Instagram for the people?
At Brands by Basnight.
Okay, Brands by Basnight. Yeah. And then what's your website where people can go book?
Website is www.buybasnight.com. So it's BYBASNIGHT. You can just hit the services tab and it show all the things that I have to offer for the people.
Okay, cool. And how do you feel about I need to start asking people this more. DMs and messages and emails.
I'm better with emails.
Okay. So email.
But honestly, my moon is in Gemini and I forget something immediately. So, yes. You know, I'll get to you. But a DM or email is fine.
Okay, cool. Just gotta let the people know. Emanuel, I appreciate you so much. This was really good. I appreciate our conversation. It was so organic and natural. And I'm looking forward to just watching you from afar and all the wonderful things that you have coming out. I'm excited for you. So thank you so much for sharing your time and energy with us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thank you. Have a good one.
All right, you too. Bye.
Confirm no say, and I'll never get played.